Kopachi still appears on maps, but if you go there, all you'll find are warning signs driven into the ground. The houses weren't abandoned, they were demolished and buried exactly where they stood. Soviet liquidators knocked the buildings down and buried them whole because it was faster than decontaminating them. Kopachi is a village that exists beneath its own rubble, and it isn't the only one. 130 kilometers north of Kyiv, along the border between Ukraine and Belarus, there is a strip of land covering 2,600 square kilometers that the world knows by a single name: Chernobyl. But Chernobyl is not just the plant. It is not just Pripyat, with its apartment blocks and its rusted Ferris wheel. Inside that zone, there are more than 70 villages and settlements that were emptied in 1986 and have spent 4 decades disappearing quietly, with very little attention paid to them by anyone. On April 26, 1986, at 1:23 in the morning, reactor number 4 of the Vladimir Ilyich Lenin nuclear power plant exploded during a safety test that was poorly designed and worse executed. The explosion released a quantity of radiation the IAEA estimated it between 400 and 500 times that of the Hiroshima bomb. The fire burned for 10 days. The smoke moved across Europe. Soviet authorities waited 36 hours to order the evacuation of Pripyat. For the rural villages surrounding the plant, the process was slower, quieter, and far less organized. The residents of Zalissya were told to leave their homes with what they were wearing, that it was temporary, that they could return in 3 days. They left food on the tables, clothes in the wardrobes, animals in the pens. 3 days became 4 decades. Zalissya has been waiting for its owners to come back for 40 years. In Kopachi, the waiting ended differently. The liquidators, the workers sent in to contain the disaster, determined that the buildings were too contaminated to decontaminate efficiently. The solution was technical and brutal: demolish the structures and bury them in place. Today, beneath that ground, there are entire houses, schools, barns, and above them, only warning signs that say not to dig. But there were those who never left, or who left and came back. They were called samosely, those who settled themselves. Most were elderly people who had lived their entire lives in those villages, who had survived the Second World War, the famine of the 1930s, decades of Soviet rule, and who were not willing to die in a city apartment the state had assigned them, somewhere they didn't recognize as their own. They returned illegally to their houses. They planted gardens. They kept chickens. They drank water from contaminated wells because it was their water, from their wells on their land. In the 1990s, it was estimated that several hundred samosely were living inside the exclusion zone. By 2016, Ukrainian authorities counted fewer than 160. The number falls not from evictions, but because they die. One by one, in the same houses where they were born. What the others left behind remains where it was. In the villages still standing, family photographs hang on the walls. Toys sit on the floors of children's rooms. Calendars mark April 1986. Not because anyone arranged them that way for effect, but because no one has come back to change them. The exclusion zone remains restricted territory, managed by Ukrainian authorities. For years, regulated tourism allowed visits to Pripyat and some of the forgotten villages. That changed in February 2022, when Russian troops crossed through the zone at the start of the invasion. They camped in the Red Forest, one of the most contaminated areas on the planet, and dug trenches in that soil, They withdrew in March of the same year. Subsequent analysis detected that they had disturbed ground with elevated radiation levels. Civilian access to the zone has been suspended since. The villages are still there, or beneath the ground, depending on the case. The samosely who chose to stay understood perfectly well what radiation was. They were not ignorant of the risk. They had simply decided that dying on their land was preferable to living somewhere else. It is difficult to know whether that is a form of resistance or surrender. Perhaps there is no difference.